Fine, thank you. I've got that. So apologies for that. It's a little strange environment. This and screen with nobody talking to you. So I'm really pleased to speak to you. I'm going to talk today about mindfulness. Strangely enough, it's been a weird world we live in. Um, I think that since COVID's hit us, I don't know about you, but it's as if our minds have gone into overdrive. And I've heard this from so many different people. That's the worry, the anxiety, the change. It's just that this treadmill that sits in our head has gone into a sort of state of a hyperdrive, and it's chatting. Our internal narratives are going on. We're chasing after facts. We're trying to find the truth. We're worried what to do, and the pressures of lockdown, etc., mean that we're not able to de-stress and talk to other people in quite the same way as we used to. So I'd like to talk a little bit about something that's helped me and helps a lot of people in their lives to deal with situations like that. And it's a word called mindfulness. We've got a lot to deal with, not only the stresses of COVID, but of course the challenges of dealing with the economy and what we do in our jobs. After 6 months of living in this strange world, before COVID, we were on a particular sort of treadmill, chasing targets, keeping our businesses afloat. But it just got more difficult in many senses during lockdown. In some ways, we were with families. We could spend time with them, and that was easier for us. And I think on a day-to-day basis, if we can survive our sort of tsunami of Zoom meetings and telephone check-ins, now we've got all these fake news and the contending dialogues about what is democracy, what is business, what is disease, what is flu, what is COVID. And it's so hard to tell truth and fiction anymore, and to know where we stand. And in many senses, a lot of the very bases of what was our identity and what made us stable has been shaken by this. Now, I don't think that's necessarily all bad. At the moment, we're level one lockdown, and there's a massive desire to kind of normalize the new and go back on that same treadmill and pull those levers in the organization to make it all happen. But for me, the big challenge now is in this change world is, what levers should you pull and why? You can't just go back and start pulling all the levers you used to, because in many ways they're not even connected in the same way to get things done, or to the same people. We're living in a virtual world. We're working, planning online. We're having to work in a low distance environment, which means we haven't got that feedback. I remember when I was a kid, my dad used to give me a steering wheel, and it had a sucker on the end. You'd stick it on the dashboard and sit in the passenger seat, and he'd be steering, and I'd be pretending I was driving, turning the steering wheel around. And some days I think maybe we all feel a bit like that. We're holding the steering wheel of our business, we're twirling it around, desperate to make it work, but it doesn't seem to be connected to anything in the same way. In fact, we don't know quite how to connect it. We're making a lot of noise, but what do we do in our businesses in these circumstances? And so our minds get busier and busier, and we get more and more concerned. Well, there are ways that we can deal with it. I think if we get panicked, we tend to focus on the problem to the exclusion of everything else. Now, I used to be an airline pilot, funnily enough, for part of my life. And you don't want your pilot to be panicked. If they get upset, you don't want them just touching every lever. You calm down, and you focus, and you just take a deep breath, and you go back to the process and work out what to do. So if we focus on the problem, we get frantic about solving that thing in front of us, we're not often dealing with the deeper causes in ourselves or in our businesses. What are the deep drivers in our businesses? How do we get to pull the right levers? I remember, I don't know if any of you are football fans, I'm sure a lot of you are, and this dates me, but I remember the fantastic Manchester United team. And they had these two great players called Dwight York and Andy Cole, and they scored 53 goals between them in the sort of 98, 99 season, a long time ago. But they were legendary because there was something about them that allowed them to sense where the other one was all the time. And they were able to be playing, and part of their mind, they weren't just focused like this, they were open. They could see the peripheral vision, they had their peripheral vision, they could see what was going around, and they had a wonderful situational awareness. And so they, like poetry, they knew where each other was, and they would play to and from each other in an almost magical way that was just a wonderful thing to see. And that's why they were so brilliant in soccer. And then I remember there was this Australian guy I met who was an Olympic trainer. He trained the teams in different sports. And he showed me this other video of these two other great soccer stars, you know, like Ronaldinho and Messi in the same team. But these guys hated each other, and they were both brought into the same team, and they were desperately competitive with each other. And there was this wonderful video of this ball looping into the penalty area like this in front of an open goal, and these two people hammering down towards it, desperate to score a goal. And they were so narrowly focused they couldn't even see each other, and just went smashed into each other, fell down, and the ball just trickled over past the goalpost and out of play. And that's what happens when you lose your peripheral vision, when you can't see the context anymore. And tension and panic and anxiety starts to make us much more target focused, and it actually works against us. So a great tool for getting your peripheral vision back and your situational vision back and honing it better is called mindfulness. And I'm going to talk about that for a few minutes. I think it's a really important part of leadership, and a critical part increasingly of the best programs on management schools offered by business schools. Mindful leaders, they're people who think more. They're, bizarrely enough, they're people who come less attached to their thoughts. They can see their thoughts and their feelings and let them be, and not have those thoughts hook them and drag them away. There's a wonderful British cognitive scientist called Guy Claxton who wrote this book called Harebrain and Tortoise Mind. A hare is like, you know, it runs fast like a cheetah, and a tortoise goes very slowly. And he talks about these two minds that we all have. This very smart, you know, frontal cortex mind that's working away, getting ideas, coming up with solutions, taking 10 to the dozen like I am now really fast. And this tortoise mind, this slow sense-making capability we all have that you really can't force into fast action. And I'm sure a lot of us have these sort of epiphanies in times of detachment from everything that's going on in the world. I mean, you may play golf, you may run, you may cycle, you may walk, you may have hobbies, maybe cooking, maybe having a shower, maybe doing the gardening. But for those times when you stop churning on in your own mind, obsessing in it with our thoughts, and you just let it go, and you somehow relax. And what happens then is another part of our minds start working. And if you've ever woken up one morning with this amazing insight, this problem, you slept on it, and the answer came, it's that slow, that tortoise mind that's working on it. It works in its own way. When we're concentrating on something else and not letting those obsessive thoughts just drag us along, this other part of ourselves, this deep sense-making mind, starts to have a good, starts to make some sense for us. And sorry about that. And starts to actually stop us from, you know, starts to allow these deeper senses to come to the surface. And those things I would call epiphanies, you know, great deep insights that we can't force. Another great book is by a Nobel Prize-winning author called Daniel Kahneman, who writes about thinking fast and slow. And he talks about all the cognitive distortions and these errors of our minds that we don't know about, that when we think fast, we think are true. And I think this is why we get so caught up in conspiracy theories or all these other things, or fake news. We believe it has to make sense. But that deeper part of our mind, which is worrying but works in its own way, needs to be given its time. So I think we place too much confidence in our own judgment sometimes, and we don't hold it in enough doubt. We have strong opinions strongly held, where probably the better way to do that is have strong opinions but lightly held. And why lightly? And I think that's interesting, because if you've got strong opinions, then you come forward with what you believe. But if you have some skepticism about your own mind and your own judgments, which is healthy, because none of us are all right all the time, that allows you to be to lightly hold those strong opinions. And when somebody else comes with good argument or good insights, it allows you to see them and move. And I think these capabilities are really important. So in a sense, we have to slow down the narrative, clear out the clutter in our heads, and let these answers to questions we might not even know we had. We need to let those answers emerge. And sometimes we really can't force them. And in that process, we have to become more and more in touch with the authentic versions of ourselves, not the versions we've allowed ourselves to become through our obsessions or what our parents wanted us to be or what we think the companies want to be, not those artificial avatars and persona we present, but who are the real selves? Who are the real people? Because it's in that real person that you are that the real power of your insight and creativity, and in fact, your achievement comes, because you can force yourselves into achievement, but how valid is that? How important is that for you as a person? There was a wonderful line that I saw the other day on social media, which was, "What do you refuse to feel? What do you refuse to feel?" And I think a lot of people interpret that as being, "What? Well, I'm not going to feel negative. I'm not going to." It's not about that at all. Is what is it? What are the places to go? The doors in your mind you don't want to open, simply because it's a little bit too painful and too hard. And what happens is we close those doors and we put a lot of energy into closing them, but actually they're often not so dangerous. They actually hold the key to the new sense of insights and powers you have. So practicing mindfulness allows you to start to go into those places more easily and to make sense of what we avoid, and rather less painfully start to see those things we're in denial about. And very often we see, wow, there's a deep truth there that's going to help me. And when we develop a familiarity with the shadow areas of ourselves, we unlock the true wells of our creativity and our latent power. I often think these shadows, these things, they're like dogs on a leash. It's like these powerful emotions. It's your choice whether you allow them to come untrained to control you and drag you around, or whether you face them, train them, and control them, and then they power you to where you want to go rather than dragging you everywhere. And that's all about self-knowledge. So the more you practice mindfulness, and I'm not going to give a lesson in that, you can read up about this, the less you are captured in your daily sort of vexations, and the more the bigger existential important issues start to come into view. It's like those soccer players, instead of being obsessed, you're starting to see wide, and there's a sense of relief and say, aha, okay. It doesn't give you a fantastic answer, but it gives you much more potential and a clear direction. I often say it's better to be vaguely right than precisely wrong. It gets you into the vaguely right area. Oh, that's where I should go. And then you walk in to explore it. And then it becomes clearer what levers you should pull. What are the big levers that are really connected to something? And then when you calm yourself down to, well, if I pull that, that's connected to that, to that, to that, and that. Oh, wow, and things start to happen. And you start to get this insight and you go further for less effort, for more cause. Over the time, and you won't be so frantic either. And the compound effect of this is it can be as magical as it is massive. You know, I don't play golf, but I have tried a few times. But what I did learn from my coach is the harder you try to hit the ball, the tenser you are and the more unsuccessful you're going to be. It's like you can't drive for that ball to go somewhere. You've got to have a rhythm, a positioning, and a flow, and you've got to let it happen. And that whole flow, when you swing into the ball, you lean into your swing, the ball hits and it flies magically to somewhere you wouldn't believe it would have gone. And the more you try, it tenses up. And I think that is really why these arts of mindfulness, meditation, focusing on the breath are so important to us now and are really important to leadership. There's so many leaders who practice these things, and perhaps you should too. It used to be the preserve of the gurus in the ashrams, and you don't have to do that. I actually did in my 20s for about 4 years. I lived in a Hindu ashram, and it was odd. Why would I do that? But I have to tell you, it's through my life, it's been one of the most helpful things I ever did, and it's allowed me to switch off a bit and just to put myself in doubt a little bit in a healthy way, and start to see other people's perspectives and the bigger views. You can download apps now that really help you. There's so many of them, and I think you should try. And a lot of you may know that those books by Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote *Sapiens*, *Homo Deus*, and *21 Lessons for the 21st Century*. Now, that's an amazing author who's come up with so many ideas that are defining. He's a historian, actually, and defining our existence and what life means and what the future will be and what human beings are going to be. He spends 2 hours a day meditating and takes a month off every year in a silent, technology-free retreat. I mean, who would have thought? And for him, our future superpower is that old mantra of know ourselves. We need to know our thoughts, our emotions, our assumptions, and our chosen identities. Who we are is a bit more than these narrow choices or this flood of thoughts we have. These thoughts that we have in our minds, they're obsessive, but they're not always the truth. They're thoughts, and our feelings captivate us, and we think our feelings are so important. But when you meditate, when you're mindful, you can watch these thoughts come and go and say, aha, you can watch the feelings come and go. And you start to not be so dragged around by them. You say, well, they're just thoughts, they're just emotions. Why this is important for him is he talks about the future of artificial intelligence and algorithms. And he's saying that, once we start to get sensors beyond the skin level, under the skin, and nanotechnology and sensors into how we are, how we feel, you can look at a computer and we have ways being where your eyes go, where you pay attention, sensing your emotions. All these things are coming to us now. Before long, there would be so much of that data flooding into people that somebody will know if you like this or that, and they'll present a different sort of advert or a different sort of thing to you based on your personal preferences, and you won't even know that's happening. So if you don't want to be a victim of these algorithms, if you don't want to become a consumerist or behavioral puppet, he says you really need to get to know ourselves. And if we want to do that, we've got to practice disciplines like mindfulness. It helps us help other people too. So we need to still this mess in our minds. Most of all, we need to break the sort of semi-automated response that chain us to the hamster wheel that's spinning faster and faster than it even did in March. If we don't, we'll find ourselves frantically doing the same things all the time, desperately trying to get a different result, but we cannot possibly get a different result that way. So the big discipline and skill we need now is to practice things like mindfulness. So in the last minute or so, if I'm talking, just to regain our sense of perspective, we build more mastery of our own lives by doing mindfulness, which has been tested over the last 6 months. It's going to be tested even further as we go into the fourth industrial revolution, but a post-pandemic one as well. But our greatest weapon will be our mental resilience, a strong sense of purpose, a profound empathy with other people, and a knowledge that we're not the same, we're fundamentally equally vulnerable to the future. And so we have to collaborate and work with each other. And to do that properly, we have to know ourselves. And so I think that's why the greatest leadership programs found, some of the greatest leaders are really practicing this idea of mindfulness to gain this mastery. So thank you very much for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Dean and Director of Henley Business School Africa, Mr. John Foster-Pedley. A really great narration on self-knowledge and self-awareness. It actually reminded me of a recent article that was released stating that 75% of careers are derailed for reasons relating to emotional competencies. And I mean, you had mentioned, Mr. Pedley, how we should censor our emotions and censor where our eyes go, still the mess in our minds so that we can focus going forward. I really appreciated the question that you posed to say, what do we refuse to feel? And by answering that question, that is a accurate practice of mindfulness and self-knowledge there. And once again, it reminded me of the quote that says, knowledge of others is wisdom, but knowledge of yourself is enlightenment. So it comes back to saying, how do we manage a locus of control when it comes to forging ahead business wise and forging ahead in tough times? I mean,